GLS Solicitors is led by award-winning solicitor Harjap Singh Bhangal. GLS Solicitors, when the experts need an expert.
So, welcome to Legal Solutions. As you know, it's Friday and we talk about issues and community issues, and today I've got a community person with me today, someone who's hoping to get your vote in the upcoming election next year, somebody who's got your vote before, an elected MP, relative of ours, good friend of the programme, good friend of the channel, from Slough constituency, originally from Gravesend, Medinal Hagia, shadow cabinet member as well. So Medinal Hagia Tanmanjeet Singh Dhesi. So Tan, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. A pleasure to be here once again with you, Harjap.
Tan, we're going to talk about a few things today.
Yeah.
And a lot of issues. We've received a lot of questions from people that want to ask you stuff. I think first, obviously, the issue of the moment is the Israel-Palestine conflict.
Yeah.
And that's been going on. And particular, a lot of communication has been directed towards you and towards the Labour Party's stance on it.
Yeah.
Just officially tell us, what is the Labour Party's stance on this, on the actual situation?
Look, Harjap, first of all, let me clarify. Look, we all want peace, right? I've stood there, I've called for a ceasefire, I've said, look, we want peace, we want an end to the violence, cessation of hostilities. Now, there's different.
Have you called for a ceasefire?
Yes, I've openly.
On how many different occasions have you called?
It is in Parliament. If anybody goes to my Dhesi, whether it's Twitter, Facebook, Insta, whatever feed it is,
we'll see your video there.
With me, is you get an accessible, approachable person. I think very few MPs will be so open in terms of anything that I'm doing.
Yeah.
I'm always advising people, this is what I'm doing, this is my argument. You may or may not agree with it, but this is what the crack is. Now, in terms of this, what happened, there are votes in Parliament and on various issues, right? Month in, month out, each party puts forward their stance on something. So, for example, if the Liberal Democrats put forward their aspect, the rest of us normally abstain unless it's an agreed stance by all the parties, in which case it gets unanimously done. Now, with regards to what's happening there, the Israel-Hamas conflict, there was a debate on what's called the King's Speech.
Okay.
So, the King Charles has come along, put out the government's thing. So there we're debating predominantly national, local, the sort of issues, NHS and so on.
What's going to come in the next year?
What's going to come up, Now, there was an amendment put down within that debate by the Scottish National Party on Gaza. And their amendment was on three things.
Yeah, go on.
Literally, first, they said, we condemn Hamas and their atrocities, and we want an immediate release of hostages.
Okay.
Number two, what the SNP said is, we want humanitarian aid in there ASAP.
Yeah.
And number three, we want a ceasefire.
Yeah.
Those are the three things that the SNP put down. Now, in the greater wisdom of the Labour Party, the leadership and whatever, they'd put in stuff on fiscal responsibility, fiscal lock and NHS, Flanat, and basic national issues. So a few of us went to that and said, look, 1 minute, there's going to be a vote now because of that amendment.
There's going to be a vote on that ceasefire.
There's going to be on that particular thing. The SNP haven't put down any other amendments. So we need to put down an amendment.
Right.
On Gaza and on what's going on there, because a lot of us are very, very concerned. A lot of all the bloodshed, all the death and destruction that we're seeing, and we've mentioned it on umpteen occasions. Labour Party, obviously, for the first few days, they said, well, look, this is about the King's Speech. We shouldn't be debating those. This is got to be on NHS and economy and whatever.
So their position was they didn't want to conflate the issues, right?
Yeah. So, but on Monday morning, on Monday, a whole load of us went and we said, look, if there is no Labour Party amendment...
When you say a whole load, how many of you were?
A lot, as in dozens of us who felt very strongly on it. And we said, look, we can't just have an SNP amendment. Normally, we would abstain on SNP stuff, on Lib Dems and whatever. And the government normally comes along and just defeats everybody.
Why do you abstain? Are you not free to vote by what your conscience allows you to?
Every party puts forward its plan. All right. So on this particular thing, we said, look, we need to have a solid Labour comprehensive thing. So we said the same thing on Tuesday morning. Remember, the votes on the King's Speech were happening on Wednesday night. I'm saying all this because a lot of people out there, they might look on Insta, they might look on Facebook or whatever, and they think they know the parliamentary procedures and protocols and everything else. But the sort of reports that we get access to, as well as the procedures, we know that there's a vote coming up on Wednesday night on everything to do with the King's Speech. Tuesday morning, once again at 9 o'clock, we have another meeting, and the whole load of us said, look, we'll be stepping back, right? We are shadow ministers at the moment, but shadow minister, you don't get an extra gaddi or some extra wages or some other sort of stuff. That's not what the case is.
You get a title.
Right? You get a title because your main job is to hold the minister of the day to account and to be the party spokesperson and help to formulate policies for the next election. So a whole lot of us said, look, forget all this shadow minister and everything else. Normally we would be all up for party discipline. If an amendment doesn't come in by tonight, a lot of us will unfortunately have to break party discipline and we will vote with the calls for a ceasefire, because we need to end this violence. All right, so they said, look, we've taken on board everybody's suggestions. A whole load of people wanted different things, and we will put forward on Tuesday night a solid amendment, which is what they duly did.
Did Labour put forward?
Labour put forward a very comprehensive 11-point plan.
What was in it?
Right, so the key things, number one, the Labour Party wishes that this House wants an end to the violence in Israel and Palestine. That's the first thing, end to the violence. Yeah. Number two, we want all the hostages released. 3, we want immediate humanitarian access in there. Number 4, we want Israel to stop the siege conditions to allow humanitarian aid in. A lot of colleagues were also concerned about the International Criminal Court because of war crimes. So some of us had asked that we need that in there as well. So one of the 11 things was we want an International Criminal Court jurisdiction, so that whether it's Israel, whether it's Hamas, that should be investigated by the International Criminal Court. What we also want is an enduring cessation of hostility. So not just a ceasefire. Ceasefire, by the way, is, I know some people might think ceasefire, oh look, everything's all done and dusted. That's
means end of the violence.
Ceasefire literally means a temporary suspension of fighting.
Not a permanent suspension.
Not a permanent. Don't just take my word. Don't just take Desi's word for it. Look in a dictionary, you'll see a ceasefire literally means a temporary suspension of fighting. That could be for 1 month, it could be for a week,
could be
or
for
it
a
could
day.
be for a day.
Yeah.
Right? We literally just had a ceasefire, just for
that's
a week
right,
recently.
That's right, yeah.
So what we wanted was an enduring cessation of hostilities, and what we also put in our amendment was we want a credible two-state solution. We want that process started ASAP as well. So it's not just about the current conflict, which has started up in October, but we want a two-state solution. So that was what was in our 11-point plan. We put that forward for vote. So on Wednesday night, our amendment, the Labour amendment, gets put forward.
Yeah.
So we vote for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, as a party.
When was that? Wednesday night.
Wednesday night. Everything
when was
gets
the
done together.
when was the
Same
SNP?
thing. So our one gets put forward first.
Yeah.
So our amendment got got the most votes out of any amendment.
Did the SNP vote for yours?
No, SNP abstained.
From yours on?
Yeah, so note that. Please make sure that your viewers who are saying, oh, why did our Slough MP or why did Desi
abstain from the SNP one?
A lot of people, I tell you what, put in stuff like, oh, you sell out, you've done this, you don't stand up for human rights. But for the last 6-7 years, standing up for human rights, whether it's on Punjab, whether it's on Kashmir, whether it's on the Rohingyas, whether it's on what's happening in Xinjiang, whether it's Palestine, I have seriously, at my own personal detriment, as in load of trolling, when it was the farmers' protest, I got bare amount of trolling when it was on Palestine, when I said, look, that what's going on with Israel in the West Bank, because I've been to the West Bank, I've been to Palestine to see it for myself. I said, what's happening there is a colonial era land grab going on. Yeah. And I got a lot of trolling for people, oh, he's just some sort of Muslim lover, he's a Jew hater, he's anti-Israel. Mega, look, mate, I just call it as it is.
In the farmers' protest, to be fair, we had the same thing as well. Yeah. So like, you're a Hindu hater, you're a Khalistani sympathiser. You had the same as well.
It's the same thing. And what happens during...
you had some general on your case in India as well. Some ex-general as well who said, let's ban him, let's lock him up and stuff like this. I remember you had to leave pretty sharpish.
I'm telling you, whatever it is, I get trolled every few weeks enormously. And I tell you what, 1 minute somebody's your friend, next minute they don't understand the process and they say, oh, he's the worst thing. Desi's brilliant. Next thing, Desi's all of that. I tell you what, this is, I just see it as it is, call it out for what it is, and I try to do with as clean heart, clear conscience as to what I want. Now, when I know that there is a solid Labour amendment, why would I vote for anything else? That's what I thought, right? We've got a solid 11-point plan, which has got what I want in there, an end to the violence, right? SNP abstained. The Tory party, the Conservative government said, we don't agree with this. They voted it down.
Yeah.
That's how we lost that.
They voted both amendments down,
right.
didn't they?
Yeah. And after our one, then the SNP amendment was put to the vote.
Okay.
Their 3-point plan. Their one got less votes than the Labour one. So just as like they've abstained on our one, we abstain on their one. But regardless of even if we'd collectively come together, the Conservative government had already said we're voting down both of these, right? Job done, right? So the Liberal Democrats actually voted with us. But but despite all of that, anyway, SNP voted it. That got voted down. The Conservatives said we don't agree.
Why couldn't you vote? Why couldn't you vote for the SNP one? It pretty much said it was a mini sort of version of what you were saying anyway.
But look, that's where party discipline comes in. Where what we said is that unless, because remember, the SNP are not some sort of friends of the Labour Party. We are in direct competition with the SNP, especially in Scotland, where the Conservatives have tried to portray, oh look, if there's an election, I bet you what will happen is Labour and SNP will get together to form coalition, and which we don't want. We are saying, look, Labour will form a government on its own, and we don't, regularly sit down with the SNP and the Tories, because that's why the SNP have got one way of going about it. The Labour Party has its own agenda.
They're an opposing political party to you, basically.
That's it.
Right?
So unless it was all agreed beforehand, when they put forward their amendment, they didn't consult the Labour Party.
They just went for it. Yeah.
They just went for it.
Yeah.
When we put forward our amendment, we did ask them that, look, obviously they don't want to know our amendment, because they said, no, we've got our one, thank you very much. But anyway, as I said, Labour amendment actually had more votes than the SNP one, but they both got voted down, right? And I'll tell you what, some colleagues, this is what happened. I know where I can already see the question coming up, where why have 56 Labour MPs voted for the SNP amendment, right? That's because when we sat down on Wednesday, and I've got nothing against my colleagues that decided that, is as was eloquently put by a handful of them to me when we sat down, we said, like, what we're going to do now, right? And I said, well, look, I think we got what we wanted, which is a solid amendment, end to the violence, we need end to the siege, get a 2-state solution, that's what we wanted, right? Some of them said, look, Tam, we know what you're saying, but you know what's going to happen. There's going to be a backlash from some because the hashtag is out. I said, they go, look, when the hashtag comes out, or when there's a major campaign, they said, look, we've made 2 strategic errors here as the Labour Party. Number one, our amendment is too late. For over a week, everybody is focused in on now there's some big vote on a ceasefire. So everybody's focusing in on the SNP amendment, the media, social media, and everybody else. The number 2, our one, while it might have end to the violence, which is a lot more permanent than a temporary ceasefire, people are focused in on the word ceasefire. Our amendment hasn't got the word ceasefire in it. So they said, we're going to have to go around for a few weeks, go and explain to every Tom, Dick and Harry, Mr. Singh and Mr. Khan and Mr. Kumar over there as to this is what our amendment is, this is the procedure. They go, look, for the sake of breaking party discipline, we're just going to vote for both of them, right? Right? Don't worry if, even if we have to step down from shadow minister, whatever the hell it is, because in a few months' time, those same shadow ministers will end up becoming shadow ministers again, yeah? Even if they have to step down. So that is where I don't hold that against, because technically, they've done that and they've had it a lot easier than somebody like me who has tried his level best to maintain discipline, but also we've got something solid as our Labour comprehensive plan.
A lot of people have said it's because you didn't want to lose your shadow minister position and that you're angling for a ministerial position if and when Labour come in. That's why you didn't vote for it. A lot of people said that said they're disappointed because after your maiden speech in Parliament and your talks on human rights and you speak for Kashmir, which you do, so you do take on Punge. Right. But after that, they were disappointed that you didn't find your voice in this amendment. And a lot of people, like you said, have said you're a sellout. And that you should have listened to your constituents rather than your party, and that if your colleagues could have voted and moved back, then why didn't you?
All right,
I'll let you answer. All of that Yeah. Do you have a credible answer?
100%.
Right. And if your colleagues, like you said,
Yeah.
did vote for it, and they had the same to lose as you, yeah, right? Then why couldn't you? Why couldn't you vote for both amendments?
Yeah.
Yeah. What if this was the amendment that was getting the hashtag, like you said, and if this was what your constituents contacted you and said, should you have followed your constituents or should you have followed the whip from what your party said?
Yeah.
If other people had the courage to break whip, and courage is probably the word.
Oh, I don't know about the word courage.
Well, that's what people are saying, right?
Okay, yeah.
Right? So if other people had the courage, or they had the integrity, they're saying, right, which is even a stronger word, yeah, to break the whip.
Yeah.
Why didn't you? Why did you, after becoming such a hero, yeah, then let yourself down on this issue? And
I don't
do you now regret it? Yeah. And do you wish that you had voted for that? And wouldn't that have made your life simpler, even though you would have had to step down from your shadow ministerial post? Or was you worried that you're never going to get back in and you're going to remain a backbencher forever?
I don't know. A whole load of questions, a whole load of
there's loads of issues.
allegations and stuff there.
Yeah.
But I'm glad you asked that, because I would have expected nothing less from you. Right now, firstly, look, three quarters of the Labour Party stuck with our plan. What I voted for, I thought, is a solid plan.
Yeah.
Right? It's better than the SNP amendment because it, in terms of investigating war crimes, in terms of a two-state solution, all of the other things that I mentioned, is there in the 11-point plan. Yeah, just Google it, you'll see that where that is in comparison to the SNPs.
Yeah.
Number two, right, in terms of Laloji or Kursilia or whatever, right, that, like I said, shadow minister, that's not some sort of, you get some minister.
What are you shadow minister
right,
for?
Shadow minister, I'm now the shadow minister for exports. So I used to be transport.
Okay.
Right, look, ministers or shadow.
So it's not one of the main, it's not health or, or whatever, or foreign secretary or,
whether main
it's none of that, right? Yeah.
I'll tell you what, if, in terms of those that voted, right, and like you said, that might have had an easier life. In terms of you don't need to go around explain
from the public. They did from the
there's a large chunk that understand the process and procedure, and they said, we understand. So I made sure that the messaging was there, but there were certain people that it's harder to convince because they're already immersed or invested and focused in on that one vote and that one word ceasefire. Yeah, like I said, we've already had the ceasefire for a week. That hasn't come up with a solution. What we need is something a lot more permanent, something that ends the violence and so forth. Now, in terms of what you also said about having an easy life. Look, if I wanted an easy life, what I was doing before in business, I would have had an easy life, 9 to 5,
multi-millionaires, right? Family.
Right? In terms of if I wanted an easy life, I wouldn't have raised human rights issues to my personal detriment, whereby various state governments either sanctioned me or said, look, we don't agree. But in terms of, say like on Kashmir rights, right? Yeah.
I know.
I have said that, not just sitting in Slough, where I think, there's quite a few Kashmiri constituents here and whatever, or in the comfort of the UK. Yeah. I said that even when I was in Delhi, when I was in India.
You did that in Punjab as well.
A lot of abuse. Because when I stood up and I said, look, Article 370, that shouldn't be revoked. Article 35A, I don't agree with that. So what happens? There's a massive pile on.
You've got a right-wing troll. You've got right-wing troll.
This guy is anti-national. He's anti-India. Whenever I stand up for minorities issues, if it's something to do in India, they say, this guy is anti-national. Yeah. If I call out any minority issues or any discrimination against minorities within Pakistan, then people there say, he's Indian and he's anti-Pakistani and falana demkra. Yeah. So if I want an easy life, I would just go whatever the flow is, whatever the hashtag of the moment is. But if I think that our party has listened to us and has put forward a solid, credible plan, I will vote for that because that's what I've asked for. Now, if they didn't put something forward, I'd already said to them, look, sorry, mate, I don't usually break the party whip. I don't, with the discipline, because I believe in the Labour Party values and I want a Labour government because I think that's what millions of people are desperate for after 13 years of this incompetent government, which has had a whole series of failures, including crashing the economy. So I believe in maintaining that Labour movement and to making sure that we're solidifying it. Now, in terms of all this sellout and all these other, look, 1 minute, like I said, they're holding me up as some sort of bahut badhiya banda hai. Next minute, ohi shittar phir rahe hai, and saying that you're the worst thing since sliced bread, the worst thing ever. That I can't be run on the basis of hashtags and social media, and if I get a lot of trolling from one day to the next. I believe what I've done was the right thing was the right step to take after a lot of negotiations with the party. A lot of us, that's why 75% of us said, look, all right, this might not please everybody, but this is where we want to be. Yeah. And ultimately, look, in terms of what's happening, I think people are losing sight of the fact it's not, the Labour Party is not in government, right? It's Rishi Sunak, it's the Conservative government that is actually were the ones that abstained on a vote when we could have voted in the United Nations, when the majority of countries voted that, look, we need some sort of humanitarian ceasefire, or we need to do this, right?
Yeah, the UK abstained.
Right? The UK abstained, even on our amendment, or the SNP amendment. The government
voted it down.
They didn't have to vote both things down.
They could have just let it go.
Right? But that's what they want to do. But rather than that, people are focusing in on, oh, look, Labour Party this, or Keir Starmer, or whatever. I know, look, Keir Starmer, in terms of the LBC interview, I take on board that point, but he did clarify that, the 15-20 second clip where, he was, where he clarified that, look, I didn't mean that I don't want any water or aid or whatever going into, and he did explain to us as Labour MPs, because a whole load of us said, look, what was that about? There's a lot of backlash from your LBC interview. He said, well, look, I was trying, as you'd expect with Nick Friday, it's like facing you, Harjap, yeah? You ask one question, then bande nu kai vari in an interview, going from one direction to the other, and he said, look, I'm a human rights lawyer. I know that you cannot cut off water, food, and whatever. But since then, we have seemed to have been more on the defensive. But people need to realise who the government is, who's voting down these various amendments, whether it's the SNP one or the Labour one calling for an end to the violence. And look, I'm still the same guy that I was before, calling out on human rights issues, whether it was in Xinjiang, whether it was a whole load of Sikhs that said to me, oh look, you didn't stand in solidarity with the Palestinian people. Mega brava, the amount of times I've stood up for the Palestinian people over the last 6.5 years, right, is a hell of a lot more than virtually almost any other MP there.
If this amendment had been passed, what would have happened?
Yeah, so if our Labour amendment had been passed...
Or if the SNP one had been passed.
So then the government...
Would Israel have stopped what it's doing?
No, because they're not. Look, they've not listened to most countries before. When I've said, look, we shouldn't have illegal settlements, when our, including the UK government, by the way, credit to the Tories there as well, where we've all been aligned. So everybody calls out Israel. That's illegal settlements happening there.
Yeah.
Stop building your illegal settlements in West Bank.
Yeah.
Has the Israeli government listened? Has Netanyahu listened? Netanyahu's no friend of the Labour Party, by the way. Netanyahu is very, very right wing, and I've called him out and so on, and that is why a lot of us...
Has Keir called him out?
Yeah, so he has called out...
Because he seems very wishy-washy on sort of matters, and he seems very quiet and in order to appease certain wings, or is he just worried about winning? Is it all about winning for you lot next year?
Look, that 11-point plan, that Labour amendment, which was very, very strong, that isn't just Dhesi's point of view or 150 odd Labour MPs that have voted for it. That is the agreed position of the Labour Party, including Keir Starmer, including that's when that gets put down, that is the official Labour Party policy. So we can't just do something without the Labour Party leader agreeing to it. So please just bear that in mind. And look, I will.
Then why would he tell you to abstain on the SNP one? If we want peace.
Harjap, look, month in, month, a lot of people, we do this month in, month out. On they abstain on ours, we abstain on theirs because we've got different proposals.
Is it just because you're totally opposed in political views and that's why?
So that's what's happened. And this is the first time in years that a lot of people have suddenly realized, oh, you've abstained on a vote. If you look at the parliamentary record, there's a whole load of abstentions.
Which you probably abstain on it. Which they abstain on yours.
They abstain on ours. But like I said, on our Labour amendment for an end to the violence in Israel and Palestine, the SNP abstained. Not one SNP MP voted with us. But is anybody calling them out on the abstention? Everything seems to be catered towards the Labour Party or towards people like myself. And because that's what the focus was on that SNP. But I mean, going forward,
listen, how are you going to make it up to people who feel disappointed in you? The people out there who are writing on your Instagram and all that you've seen are tweeting you and have called you various stuff, and from how are you going to make it up to them, the people who you disappointed, even in your constituency as well, right? And so what are you going to do from now going forward?
Look, Ikta, if anybody's disappointed out there, look, I apologise to you if you think that I've done something wrong, but believe me, I have tried my level best, taking into cognizance all the views of Slough constituents, to vote for something that I thought would lead to an enduring peace. And that's what I will continue to work towards, so that there is a safe and secure Israel with a sovereign, secure Palestine, that we work towards peace in the interim now, but also towards peace in terms of a two-state solution going forward as well. That is what you're guaranteed with me, and you will know that I will continue to work hard for you. If you think that on any one issue, and like I know, in terms of whether it's on this, whether it's on other previous issues, look, we may not agree. There's a lot of times when we agree on things, but there's times when we don't agree. I've sat down with yourselves where you think, oh, you haven't done this right or whatever. But having a civil disagreement is one thing, But if people think that is some sort of sellout and this and that, right, that is where I think, 1 minute, that is uncalled for. That is not where I am, right? My aim in life, forget being a shadow minister, my aim in life wasn't even to be an MP, right? My aim in life was to run my own business. That's exactly what I did after university. When I went off to Scotland, lived and worked there for 3 years, I came into public life in a gradual way, where I was just a Labour Party member for several years, just paying my subs, never thinking I'm even going to become a councillor, right? I'm doing this because this is what I'm passionate about, and I'll continue to do it for as long as that passion and that, as long as that's there, I will continue to do that. And if I think I'm making a positive difference, the day that I think that, look, all right, that's the end of that and it's time for someone else to do it, I'm not one of those people. It's not like until 1 foot in the grave you keep going on. It's not India Pakistan style where
you've got other income streams, right? You've got stuff to do.
Look, at this moment in time, I step down from everything else, like I've called out in Parliament. If being an MP, that should be a full-time job. There should be no second, third or fourth job. So even when I get, interview free, right? You're not paying me anything, right? Come on now.
I wouldn't anyway.
Right. I know you got a big budget, right? But seriously though, but even when I've been a panelist on other channels, when, for example, I could have got thousands of pounds from those various channels who want to have me there and to, I recently, for example, Talk TV for 6 months, I was on a panel, one of the panelists, because they said they wanted me, and they said that we like the way that you put forward Labour Party opinions, and we want that sort of debate within our programmes. Now, the several £1,000s that I got from them, right? I just said, no, I don't need any of that. Just pay it directly to Slough charities, right? That is a matter of record on my register of members' interest. I'm not in it for the money. If somebody thinks I'm some sort of sellout,
don't even offer me anything. So I got nothing. So I get nothing. I go on GB News, Talk TV, everything,
and
get abuse.
You're omnipresent. You get a lot of abuse.
What we see today,
nothing compared to what I get, mate, on a regular basis, right?
You got more abuse on one point than probably I've got in about 6 months.
Oh, don't worry. I get abuse.
I've got some today.
But I tell you what, I'm really, really indebted to a lot of people out there, as in their thousands, who have supported me, especially when I'm being attacked. There's people who haven't lost the faith. I am truly indebted to yourself. For the last 6-7 years, and even when I was a councillor for 10 years, people had my back, and I have always, that's been my strength. But look, I know, genuine people who support us, and he said, Tan, why did you do that? What was the crack? I've sent out my explanation in a long email, and they've read it, and obviously we've had a good hearing of it, and I would expect nothing less from you to hold me to account. And they've read it, and they said, all right, fair enough. Now we know why you did it, Tika, right? But please keep fighting for peace. We need to get end to this killing. And I've stood up in Parliament and I've said, what is happening in Gaza? There's a child being killed every 12 minutes. That has got to stop. We agree that the hostages should be freed, and that Israel's wants to get its hostages back, and that's why we've been pleading through our negotiators, as in whether it's the Qataris, the Americans, and the Egyptians who have been critical to the negotiations, that look, we need to get the immediate release of hostages, as well as release of prisoners from Palestine. Let's get that negotiation process ongoing, so that we can get that peace that we all need.
Tan, I will say one thing. I will say this, that I know you're minded of this, but we need to remind you as well. And I think that you don't just represent Slough as well. For us, you represent
Yeah.
the Sikh community, you represent the Punjabis up there,
Yeah.
you, Preet, Verinder, Seema, you know, all of you lot, you represent us,
Yeah.
you know, and if we stand against atrocities and oppression, then
Agreed.
we expect you as representatives to speak our voice
100%.
and to do that. It not only doesn't, it reflects, anything you do reflects on you personally, but it reflects on us,
Yeah.
because then we get held to account.
Yeah,
And we're like,
agreed.
hold on, these are your boys,
Yeah.
these are your people. So why can't you stand with us? Oh, you're doing what everyone else is. And when we call for help, when we need help,
Yeah.
we see a lot of I see a lot of our Muslim brothers,
Yeah.
and I see a lot of Muslim brothers and sisters stand by us. I see a lot of our Christians and Hindus stand by
Yeah.
us, especially in matters where the farmers' protest occurred. We had a lot of Pakistani farmers
Yeah.
stand with us, and so you know, in issues like this, so I think there is a burden of that, and I think you know, you need to be reminded, as well as the others need to be reminded. Look, that sometimes you don't speak for yourself, or maybe for care, but you speak for all of us.
Yeah, well, look, I'll take on board your point, and that is why within my maiden speech and thereafter, I have said on umpteen occasions, I realise the immense responsibility on my shoulders, being the first ever turban Sikh. I know a lot of Sikhs, they've openly questioned me and why did you vote this way? What have you done here? This and that, yeah? I realise that if I do something wrong, that will reflect on every next Bhagwala out there, and that people are thinking, oh my God, you know, this person's done this and that. You should be able to walk with your head held high, that this person is in it there for the right reasons. He has got the you know, solid reasoning. Every single thing that I do or votes that I take, you know, it's not because somebody's bullied me, right? Or some people, oh look, somebody's bullied him, and you know, the Labour Party or Keir Starmer. No, I will take it issue by issue, and I will always make sure that we take into account the various reports, the various evidence that we're getting, and then vote accordingly. Now, in terms of
When was your last speech on this?
on what
On the Gaza and
Gaza? Just
when did you last speak
last
about it?
week, I spoke about it. In fact, today I've just come from Parliament. Once again, I spoke about what is happening in Palestine. More than 15,000 people already killed, and I said we need to work for an enduring peace. I have called out various individuals, including the Prime Minister, no less. So that is why I'm on top of the various things that are going on, and whatever I do say will be well researched, well reasoned, because I know that I am answerable not just to yourself, you know, your dad, I know others who will always admit it, right? But my family and my
conscience,
right?
yeah.
My own conscience, because I know that, look, as Sikhs, we're working for Sarbat, there is solidarity there. In terms of, look, you mentioned about the Muslim community, I've raised things to do with Islamophobia. In fact, there's a debate on Islamophobia today, and I've called out various people, and I said, look, when are we going to tackle this? When is the government going to adopt the definition of Islamophobia? When it's been issues to do with the Hindu community? Who was it that stood there in Parliament calling for the maltreatment of Sri Lankan Hindu Tamils and calling out the mistreatment of Sri Lankan Muslims and Christians who weren't able to bury their dead? Who spoke up on those human rights issues, even though some people within the majority Sri Lankan community may not have liked what Dhesi had to say on that? That is what my job is to be doing, is to be speaking up on human rights. Now, I've done that on umpteen occasions before, whether it's been in favour of the Muslim community or Hindu community or Sikh community or the Christian community or other communities. When I've spoken up for the Hindu community, then you got a whole load of trolling. Oh, look,
have you spoken up for Kashmiri Pandits?
Kashmiri Pandits, I've raised that issue as well.
Yeah.
I've said, look, that we need to make sure that the human rights of all are respected. And where, you know, when atrocities, I know that within say Kashmir or within other parts of India or Pakistan, where atrocities have been committed against different minorities. So we need to make sure that everybody lives, or, you know, rather than politics of hatred and division, that we be inclusive. So that is what our job should be. And that is what I have tried to do. I know that when I've spoken up on Sikh issues, people just a lot of trolling or whatever. Oh, this guy only speaks up on Sikh issues because he's a Sikh and whatever. When I speak up on Muslim issues, then you got a whole load of right-wing trolls saying, oh look, he's just some sort of Muslim lover. When I speak up for the Hindu community, then they go, oh, he's a sellout. He just wants to speak up. Now he needs to get some of the Hindu vote. It's not about vote bank politics. It's about doing what is right. So that is what I will continue to do. I apologize if somebody feels hurt, or if they hopefully I've clarified certain issues. But if somebody thinks that I've done something wrong, please email me and I will send you a full clarification on whatever issue.
Do you reply back?
Oh, believe me, mate. I'll tell you what, I get thousands of emails, but thanks to my hard-working team, we make sure that for the various issues, sometimes it might take a few days or a few weeks to get a response. Like at the moment, like we're getting literally thousands of emails every month, right? So we do try to make sure that everybody gets responded to. If it's something to do with homelessness or rough sleeping, they will take priority. That is our job. Within a matter of days, that person's got to be dealt with. If it's a policy issue, like say international affairs or human rights, that might take a few weeks, but it will get responded to so that each person knows why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Let's talk closer to home, right? So we're talking about international issues. Let's talk about what you're doing for the people of Britain and for the people of specifically for Slough.
Yeah.
So we put a few questions out there to the people of Slough today, and they've come back and they've said quite a few questions, and they said, well, ask Tan this and ask Tan that, so we will. So they've said, make sure you ask Tan about Slough High Street. Right. So we asked a page called Slough Local, and they said we need to ask him about the High Street, and what's going on in the High Street. There's a lack of investment. All the shops are gone. Pretty much. Slough High Street is not what it was. What are you going to do to make Slough better or rejuvenate Slough again?
Okay. Well, first of all, I want your viewers to be aware of this as well, that the MP, the Member of Parliament for any particular constituency, doesn't run the town. So I am, the good people of Slough have elected me as their representative in Parliament. Now, there are certain powers that we delegate down locally. So, for example, the council is run by councillors and council staff. The police is run by the local police and crime commissioner and so on. Now, in terms of the High Street, that isn't owned by the government or even the council. A lot of it is private, various private developers. Now, the major scheme, there's been various developments on it, but the major scheme is on the two shopping centres.
One's the observatory,
so the
right?
Queensmere and the observatory. They are owned by a company called ADIA, the Abu Dhabi Investment Authority. They have teamed up with a major multi-billion pound UK developer called British Land. They had put in plans over the last few years. They've been putting in plans because to demolish and then rebuild. Now that has been ongoing. They've been in negotiations with the council, because all planning issues, whether it's for an extension or whether it's for a shopping centre, that doesn't come to the MP. That's dealt with through the Slough Borough Council. So they have put forward plans, and I'm hopeful that the council, having the right negotiation, will get to that.
Is that a Labour council?
No, at the moment it's a Tory Lib Dem coalition. So it was a Labour council before. It's now a Tory Lib Dem.
But has the council got any money? Isn't it bankrupt?
So it is what they've done is they've issued a Section 114, which means technical bankruptcy. What it means also is that they can provide services, but only the statutory legal services. But in terms of this, the High Street, that isn't to do with council funding is going to fund that. The ADIA, their consortium, what they wanted was initially to build a massive shopping centre. They've now changed that plan because of COVID and everything else and the boom in online shopping. They then put forward proposals for a mixed use scheme. So retail, commercial offices and resi, so residential. So I'm hopeful that they...
So we're going to see more flats there?
So it's a mixed use scheme. It's like where you have retail, then commercial offices and then residential. But even that hasn't had planning permission yet, because there has been a lot of negotiation as to what would be the right mix within that. The council doesn't want too many flats. That's what they've been arguing for in the last few years, that look, we want more retail offering, we want more commercial offices and so on, but they want to get the right mix which is suitable for the High Street. So that's what's going on there.
Isn't your job to attract investment to Slough.
Yeah.
Isn't it, as an MP, you should be going out and bringing the big companies to Slough.
That's
You should
it.
be bringing all the organisations to Slough.
Yeah,
So,
that-
what
I
are you
am
bringing? They're all gone.
No. Look,
Bhaj gaye, yeah.
कोई भज्जिया भुज्जिया नहीं यार. I tell you what, I know a lot of people might look at the high street isn't the whole of Slough.
Right.
Slough is a huge business hub. Slough's got more UK corporate headquarters
Yeah.
than Scotland, Wales, or Northern Ireland. We've got the largest singly owned trading estate in the whole of Europe.
Yeah.
I, along with others, are at constant pains over the last 6-7 years to attract companies there. A lot of companies have been coming there. We've got
So tell me the names of a few you mentioned.
For example, Microsoft are now looking to make a massive investment there. We've got other major multinational companies investing in particular
Isn't O2 in Slough?
in data centers. So
O2
O2 have got their offices there, but the data centers is where there's been a lot of concentration. We now in Slough have managed over the last few years to have more companies putting their data centers there than anywhere else in the world apart from Virginia in the US. So Virginia in the US, number one.
Yeah.
Slough UK is number 2 in terms of concentration of data centers, and that's all happened in the recent few years. We've got companies from the likes of Ferrari, Maserati to O2 to a whole array of major companies there. But but I do take on board the point that look, the high street. A lot of what happens is when somebody knows that something is going to get demolished, a lot of the major stores don't want to be, they want long-term leases. They want 20, 25 odd year leases. So they are waiting for that construction to happen before they can then come back in.
What's
there.
the timescale on that
So
construction?
that again will be dependent on the negotiations between the developer and Slough Borough Council. Once that planning permission goes in, it's not where the MP dictates. That company must do something, because that's not my money, it's their money, but they have to get that planning permission approved. The council, what they should be doing is acting on behalf of Slough Borough residents to make sure that that right mix is there. So that's where we are with the high street. But I'm sure that as and when that development starts to happen, once again we will have major retailers and others coming to the high street. It's always like a cyclical thing. During the 70s and 80s, Slough, I remember, because my parents, I was born in Slough, so I know that my parents were saying that during the 70s, 80s, lots of shops, lots of stuff was happening because there's a lot of building going on. But then gradually, over the decades, something then declines and then it gets built again. So that's where we are.
Right. The other thing is, what about the issues of crime, homelessness in your constituency? So crime is quite prevalent. In Slough. Homelessness is an issue as well, right? What's being done about that?
Well,
and does that come under your remit?
That is something that I have raised again and again with government ministers on the floor of the House. I've talked about the rise in violent crime. I've talked about how the government's austerity agenda is cuts, of how they have decimated more than £1.4 billion from youth clubs, the youth centres. That was what was providing those youth workers. They were going about into the heart of the community to make sure that those young people, especially in Slough, it's the youth capital of Britain, the lowest average age of any town or city in the country, that they were providing the platform for those young people to have, to express and enhance their talents. Now, if those youth clubs or those youth workers aren't there, obviously that is going to lead to issues. The police, when I'm asking the police that, look, we need more resourcing, their budgets, as they said, have been cut by more than 20%. A lot of the times when residents have complained to me, and I have raised those issues directly with the Slough Police Commander, whether it's been in terms of violent crime, whether we've had issues in terms of burglaries not being investigated or catalytic converter thefts and so on, all of those issues I have raised with the government to say, look, you need to stop cutting, you need to actually start providing resources. All right, thankfully they did do a U-turn about 3 years ago, having cut more than 21,000 police officers. They then went on a recruitment drive, so they've now recruited 20,000 police officers. But what that's meant is that we've actually got fewer police officers than there were several years ago, and we haven't got the investment into our public services. I've raised the issue about the National Health Service, where a lot of people can't get a medical appointments with the GPs, or NHS, where we've got more than 7.8 million people waiting. That's a record high waiting lists. I've raised issues about crumbling schools and why we need funding into our schools. So all of those things, I'm just hopeful that the good people of the UK, including your viewers, will finally, after 13 long years, get rid of this incompetent government and actually support and vote for a Labour government to come in to sort out this mess once again, to have a solid plan for our public services and to make sure that we have safe streets once again.
How are you going to align Labour's position on immigration when your constituency is full of immigrants?
Well,
So how are you going to say we're going to stop the boats and stop dependence and raise what the Conservatives are doing at the moment? How are you going to be vocal about this? If a British person wants to call their spouse over, and there's a lot of applications that come from Slough, I know we deal with them, right? So from going from 18,600 to now going to 38,700, right? It's more than double. Now the average wage that's not even 38,700.
Agreed.
And a junior doctor only gets 32,500. So under the current proposals, or what the current law is going to be, how is anyone supposed to call their foreign spouse over? I mean, surely you need to speak up more for immigrants, or tell your party to change their stance, or come out and say something positive rather than saying, well, the current plan is, oh, well, actually, we're not going to go against the Rwanda plan. We need to be tighter on immigration. We're going to stop the boats too. So how are you going to align your views with that?
Okay, look, Harjap, I know being an immigration solicitor, you're probably a lot more eloquent and well versed in the various issues of this, but I have read a fair amount and I've participated in various debates, including holding the Home Secretary to account within the last week as well on the floor of the House. In terms of the Labour Party policy, we have said that we want a fair immigration policy. We will tackle illegal immigration, but we also want to make sure that we value the immense contribution that immigrants, including our parents, have made to the economy, to society. We can't constantly be engaged in these Tory culture wars, talking against migrants and immigrants, because they have made our NHS, our schools and everything else a lot better. We're reliant as a nation on the contribution from our diverse communities, including immigrants. But what we have said, we want a fair immigration policy, a points-based system. We don't agree with the Rwanda plan. You're not going to get gimmicks. The Rwanda plan, by the way, they've already spent more than 140 million pounds on that. The only people that they've managed to send over to Rwanda has been 3 Home Secretaries, paid once again by the good taxpayers, including the 140 million pounds and counting. So we've said, look, that's a gimmick. We're not in favour of that. So we will oppose the government where we see, but if we think that there is something that we could have agreement on, then we will agree. But it's not opposition just for the sake of opposition. But we do realise that we also need to process. There's a huge backlog. When people come to me with Home Office issues, and that's why I've had to raise this on the floor of the House, where a lot of people can't get spousal visas, Home Office applications are taking too long. I have said that's not fit for purpose. Why have we got a record high waiting list for these things to be processed? So what we've said is, rather than spending 140 million pound plus and more on things like Rwanda, we want to deal with that backlog. We don't want to be spending more than 7 million pounds a day on hotels. That's what's happening, by the way, while the government doesn't process applications. That's what's been happening. And for those who are concerned about immigration, also bear in mind what I just said to the Home Secretary. I said, well, look, net migration now is at 672,000. That's 3 times the level that it was in 2019 when the Conservatives came in. When they promised, they made a solemn pledge, Boris Johnson,
we're going to cut it down,
that we are going to reduce it
to tens of thousands.
Right? So rather than reduce, they have more than trebled it. So the people that are worried that, oh look, Labour Party doesn't get it, and what we said is, look, we don't agree with these gimmicks and draconian measures that the Tories are taking. What we will do is sensible, fair-minded policies, but we won't just offer you the earth and then end up doing the exact opposite. But I hope that that's a good airing of issues. You have held me to account today, but in true fashion, I was late here to come. That wasn't my fault, by the way. It's traffic, you know how it is, yeah? But now I've got to go to another meeting, so I'm already delayed, but I hope that I have answered honestly and frankly your various questions and I hope your viewers have felt that it has been a productive interview for them.
Also to our viewers, look, he's not closed to anyone. You can go and meet him. You can go and email him, contact him. You've got any issues, bring it up with him. You're not hiding from anyone, right? Right. So he's in Slough. Go and meet him. Just like I've invited him for an interview and he's turned up, you know. And so it's your right. He's your MP. He works for you. Yeah. This is your right. If you don't agree with anything he's done, you can call him out on it. Also, if he's done something well, give him a pat on the back for it. So that it works both ways. Yeah. Sometimes it's like a kid. It's like when you have a kid. Do well, you give him a lollipop. Yeah. You don't do well, you tell him off. Well, if not if you're Asian, you take it 4 steps further. But yeah, so it's exactly that way. Tan, we hope you're going to come in next year, and we definitely hope that, you know, there won't be any complaints again, and we hope that this situation doesn't arise. And I know, that people are never going to be happy, especially with politicians, because we basically think we're all the same.
ਸਿਆਣਿਆਂ ਨੇ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਹੀ ਕਹਿਤਾ ਜੱਗ ਕਿਸੇ ਨੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਜਿੱਤ ਲਿਆ. Regardless of what you do, there will be misunderstandings, there will be misconceptions. We won't agree on everything. I don't agree with my wife on everything, right? And that's somebody that I value immensely. ਸੋ ਉਹ ਸਾਡੇ ਵਰਗਿਆਂ ਦੇ ਤਾਂ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਗਾਣਾ ਪੈਣੀਆਂ ਇੱਧਰੋਂ ਵੀ ਤਾਂ ਉੱਧਰੋਂ ਵੀ, ਪਰ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਥੈਂਕ ਯੂ ਕਰਦੇ ਰਹਿੰਦੇ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਆ ਜਾਂ ਸਪੋਰਟਿਵ ਕਮੈਂਟ, ਉਹ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਵੀ ਯਾਰ ਬਹੁਤ ਬਹੁਤ ਸ਼ੁਕਰੀਆ. ਤੁਸੀਂ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਜਦੋਂ ਕਿਤੇ ਨਾ ਮਨ ਥੋੜਾ ਹੋਰ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਵੀ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਯਾਰ ਬਾ ਕਿਉਂ ਜਦੋਂ ਲੋਕੀ ਕੋਈ ਚੰਗੀ ਗੱਲ ਵੀ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ ਤਾਂ ਉਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਵੀ ਬਹੁਤ ਬਲ ਮਿਲਦਾ ਹੁੰਦਾ, ਵੀ ਕਰਕੇ ਹੱਲਾਸ਼ੇਰੀ ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਨਿਆਣੇ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਹੱਲਾਸ਼ੇਰੀ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਰਹੋ, ਉਹ ਵੀ ਜ਼ਰੂਰੀ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਆ. ਪਰ regardless of what anybody says, positive or negative, rest assured, I will do my level best with a clear conscience to continue representing, and for as long as the people want me, and for as long as ਰੱਬ ਦੀ ਮਿਹਰ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਡੀ ਰੁੜੀ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਹੈ, ਜਦ ਤੱਕ ਜਜ਼ਬਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਆ, I will try to do my level best.
Thank you everybody for watching, and we'll join you in the next episode. That was Tan Dhesi, MP for Slough. So keep on watching. We'll have Tan back near the elections, no doubt. Can hold him to account on something else. Let's hope it's not like it is at the moment. And like we said, nothing's closed. It's your MP. Get in contact, write, email. They'll get back to you. Hold people to account, but also give them a pat on the back when they do something good. That's enough for me and Tan. To everyone, Sadhanu, Sat Sri Akal, goodbye.
GLS Solicitors is led by award-winning solicitor Harjap Singh Bhangal. GLS Solicitors, when the experts need an expert.